We've said it many times, you never quite know how your day is going to go in boating, but one thing's for sure, if you don't play by the rules, you definitely increase your chances of things going wrong. Kinda like this crew found out this past week up in Connecticut when they went out to enjoy a day of boating and Cap forgot to put on the engine kill switch. Next thing you know, Cap wound up in the water and the boat wound up on a joyride. Fortunately, the captain was quickly picked up by some friends without any injury, but just one of the wild and crazy things we'll see in this week's episode of Boating News of the Week. Our first story to make the boating news this week is going to take us over across the pond and over to France, where this was the scene just this past week, when the 43-meter custom line yacht Lady Dia was approaching a marina near Corsica when all of a sudden, according to reports, the vessel had some sort of mechanical steering failure, causing the vessel to divert course and wind up running into the cliffs as seen in the images here. According to local reports, the crew and the yacht were on their way into Bonifacio Marina at the time of the incident. Here we can see crews working diligently to try and get the yacht pulled off the cliffs. They do eventually get this vessel pulled off, and there were no injuries reported to the crew, nor were there any reports of any environmental damage. After the incident, crews took a look around and did not find any fluids floating anywhere in the water. The yacht currently is placed in Bonifacio Marina and is awaiting inspection to make sure there's no hull damage to the vessel. This wasn't the only crew to wind up on the rocks in the past week, as just this past weekend back stateside, we'll see here in our next story, another crew decided to wind up in the rocks themselves. This one's a little different though. This one's going to bring us back down to Florida in Boynton Beach. The vessel in the distance is going to be in Onslow Bay. This crew opted to take their vessel out and enjoy a day of fishing. When on the way back in, they entered the mouth of Boynton Inlet and went to turn into the channel, and the next thing they knew, the crew had lost the ability to steer the vessel and wound up crashing the boat into the seawall as seen in the images here. Now, fortunately in this incident, no injuries were reported. Quickly, the owner of the vessel wound up contacting the local tow companies, who quickly arrived on the scene to try and come up with a salvage plan to get the boat off the wall and brought back into harbor safely. But this was a very tough situation. As we can see, this is a busy inlet, and I'm being honest, none of these vessels are really slowing down, even though they see somebody's in trouble and stuck up on the seawall. So they didn't have a whole lot of options. Option one, they could leave the boat here, try and wait for the tide to come up a little bit and try and get it pulled off the wall. But unfortunately with that option, the vessel was going to get rocked and beat around by the passing boats. So the owner of the vessel opted to go with a different plan, which is to let the sea tow boats go ahead and try and rip this boat off the wall. Now, as we can see, this might not have been the best plan, as the tide's obviously gone down quite a bit since the vessel was initially put up on the wall. And here, when I say drug off, it was literally drug off that seawall. And it's my understanding at this point, there was actually quite a significant amount of damage caused to the underside of the hull of this boat when they actually went ahead and ripped that off. But let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are on the pull-off. If this was you, would you have had Sea Tow pull it off as well, or would you have waited for the tide to come up and tried to float the vessel off later on down the road? Our next story to make the boating news might be one of the wildest ones this week, and it's also one of the biggest stories, as this was the scene just off the coast of Fort Lauderdale just this past weekend, when a father had to jump into the ocean off of a cruise ship after his daughter fell overboard from the fourth deck of a cruise. According to local reports, the pair were on board the Disney Dream, which happened to be returning home from a Bahamas cruise. They were in the final leg of their journey approaching Fort Lauderdale when the father's daughter wound up falling off the fourth deck into the ocean. According to passengers on board the vessel, without hesitation, the father literally jumped off the fourth deck in right after his daughter in an attempt to rescue her, prompting the rescue that we see in the images here. Fortunately, in this situation, the actual incident was witnessed by several crew and several passengers, forcing a quick reaction time. Within moments of this happening, it was announced that over the intercom, a man overboard alert had been set. Crew quickly jumped into action, tossing life vests and life rings down to the pair to try and help them, but unfortunately, according to reports, they were actually not able to get any of them, and the father wound up treading water for approximately 20 minutes as he tried to keep his daughter afloat. Fortunately, in this situation, here we can see the rescue boat approaching the pair in the water, and they were both successfully rescued without injury, which is pretty impressive, especially when you consider they came off a cruise ship. Now, when I say that, even though it's only the 4th deck, I have to imagine it was at least a 40+ foot plunge from that deck into the water, and even after that, they were able to tread water for 20 minutes until rescuers could get to him. I've got to give this dad props. That's absolutely incredible without thought that he would jump in after his kid. We all hope we would do the same thing, but until you're actually placed in an emergency situation like this, you never know exactly what you're going to do. At this time, an investigation has been launched to try and determine what exactly happened, as the 4th deck has railing and plexiglass on the railing, so we're not 100% sure at this time what exactly happened to have the child fall overboard. But the good news is it's a happy ending and both made it back to the ship uninjured. Thanks for watching, crew. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Boating News of the Week. If you ever see anything crazy happening out on your waterways, be sure to hit us up on Facebook or Instagram and let us know when you might see your stories over here. And if you guys haven't already, go ahead and drop an anchor on the subscribe button.